The smoke slithered through the air like a snake, thick and black, coiling against the gray dusk. The city of Rangoon trembled, not from the earthquake that had just torn through it, but from the chaos left behind. Sirens screamed, voices cried out. Somewhere in the distance, the earth still moaned, unsettled. The fire had swallowed the wooden house near the hospital parking lot like it was made of paper and sin. It stood alone, tilted, trembling, half-burned. Windows burst. A roof beam collapsed in a shower of sparks. Someone screamed, a woman. Her voice ragged, shrill, and sharp enough to slice through smoke. "Please, my baby's inside! Someone help! She's in there!" Emily heard it. She wasn't supposed to. She wasn't supposed to do anything. There were rules, orders. They'd told her, "You stay put. You don't interfere. You're not trained for fires." But it was a child. The sound of that scream clung to her skin like the smoke in her hair. She stood at the edge of the chaos, just outside the caution tape, mask tight across her face, ID badge pinned like a target on her chest. And that voice, that mother's voice, it wouldn't let go. "Please, please, somebody! My daughter's in there!" The others backed away. The local volunteers turned their heads. The security man muttered something in Burmese and shook his head like she was already dead. Emily's heart thudded, too loud in her ears. "She's just a kid," she whispered to no one. Her fingers moved without asking her. She tore off her surgical mask, pulled the elastic from her hair, tossed her badge to the dirt like it was useless weight. Then she ran, not toward safety, not toward protocol, toward the fire. They say you should save who you can. But who gets to decide what can means when the air tastes like ash and the ground won't stop humming? Rangoon wasn't a city anymore. It was a wound. Open, bleeding, raw. Concrete had split like tree bark. The old market collapsed in on itself, folding into smoke. Cars were overturned like dead insects. People sat on sidewalks, stunned, some cradling the hands of the missing. Others just cried. And the hospital, St. Gabriel's, was bursting at the seams. There were too many bodies and too few names. Emily was posted near the northwest gate, just past the ambulance corridor. Her job was simple. Don't move. Keep the line clear. Direct the locals away from the broken entrance, where half the portico had caved in. The whole area near the burned house was off limits. Unsafe. That's what the orange tape meant. She wore her vest, her mask, the same kind of cheap latex gloves that tore at the fingertips. She'd only been in Burma a month, long enough to learn how to say "I don't know" in Burmese, but not long enough to stop feeling like a guest at someone else's disaster. That was when she heard it. A sound not meant for ears, but for the heart. A woman's voice, shrill, rising in panic, cutting through sirens. "Please, my baby! She's inside! Someone help her!" People flinched. One man, a fire supervisor maybe, shook his head and motioned no. The others turned away like shame was contagious. The wooden house was only 30 yards from where she stood. Smoke poured from the windows like breath from a dying animal. It was already too late, someone muttered in Burmese. There was no saving anyone in that. Emily felt her stomach twist. She could hear the mother's sobs, closer now, collapsing against the chain-link fence. "She's only 6!" the woman cried in broken English. "My daughter, please!" Emily had been told not to act alone. She had been warned, repeatedly. They gave her a handbook her first day with words underlined in red. No unauthorized interventions, no entering compromised structures, no engagement outside protocol. She'd read it, memorized it. Still, her feet didn't care. Because how do you weigh one child's scream against a rulebook? "She's in that house?" Emily asked the mother. The woman nodded, shaking, clutching a scarf in both hands, like it was the only thing keeping her anchored to this earth. Emily looked back. 2 security officers were arguing about stretchers. A translator barked orders at a boy holding gauze. Nobody was watching her. She stepped to the edge of the cordoned zone. The air changed here, heavier. Her lungs felt too small for the smoke, her eyes already stinging. She pulled the zipper of her vest up, as if that would help, then stopped herself. Think, Em, think. What she needed was water, something to breathe through. She ran to a bucket meant for hand washing and soaked the front of her cotton overshirt. Wringing it once, she tied it around her face. It wasn't perfect, but it'd buy her seconds. Maybe a minute. She glanced once more at the hospital. No one stopped her. Then she pulled the mask off, yanked the badge from her chest, tossed them both into the dirt, and ran. The grass between her and the house was blackened, smoking. The closer she got, the more the world bent, heat shimmering off the windows like glass had learned to breathe. She kicked in the loose door. It fell open with a moan. Inside, it was like walking into the throat of a dragon. Flame licked along the ceiling beams, yellow-orange like oil paint. Something popped overhead. A roof tile? A bulb? She ducked instinctively. The voice in her head screamed, "Get out! Get out now!" But the other voice, quieter, more stubborn, said, "Find her first." She moved fast, crouching low. Her fingers brushed the walls for balance. A row of framed photos melted into gray smudges on the far wall. She didn't call out, didn't want to waste oxygen. Then, soft, almost swallowed by the crackle of flame, came a sound. A cry. High-pitched. Faint. "Where are you, sweetheart? Just shout again, I'm right here." Emily pressed her hand to the wall for balance. The boards burned hot, the smoke making the air thick like syrup. Every breath felt heavier, like she was sucking it through wool. Her cotton shirt, soaked in water minutes ago, had dried too fast, now stuck to her skin, trapping heat instead of saving her from it. Somewhere in the house, wood snapped like bones. She ducked under a low beam, the glow of her penlight cutting only a narrow path through the swirling haze. Sparks danced across the floor. The front hallway was collapsing behind her. She moved forward. To her left, a shelf toppled. A stack of books exploded in flame, pages curling like dead leaves. The roof above groaned, a deep, hollow creak that made her ribs tighten. "Stay with me," she whispered, more to herself than to the voice she still hadn't found. "Just keep crying, baby. I need you to cry." Then, there. A sob, small, dry, afraid. It came from the back room. She pushed open the door with her shoulder. It hung half off its hinges, and the frame trembled when she touched it. Inside, the air was somehow worse, hotter, tighter. The smoke moved like ghosts here. In the corner of the room, beneath a broken rafter and what looked like half a dresser, lay the child, a girl, maybe 6. Her dark hair matted with soot, her cheeks streaked with tears. Her leg was pinned beneath a thick beam, the ankle twisted at a terrible angle. Her arms were wrapped around her chest, like hugging herself could hold her body together. She didn't scream anymore, just cried. Emily dropped to her knees beside her. The wood floor scorched her skin even through the fabric of her pants. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, soft as she could through the burn in her throat. "You're okay now. I'm here." The girl turned her face, eyes wide and blinking through the smoke. "It hurts." I know it does, but I'm gonna fix you up, all right? I promise." She glanced around quickly. Her kit, the flashlight, gauze, medical tape, a tongue depressor she'd tucked in there from habit. She'd used these supplies 100 times before, but never like this. "You ever had a splinter?" Emily asked as she gently touched the girl's leg. "Hurts like crazy, but it comes out, right?" The girl nodded, barely. "Well, this is just a big ol' splinter. and I'm the best at getting them out. It was a lie. This wasn't a splinter. This was a disaster. But she needed the girl calm. Still, she placed the flashlight on its side so it cast a dim pool of light over the leg. The skin was already swelling, purpling in places. Definitely a fracture. Maybe worse. Emily worked quickly, folded gauze into a makeshift cushion, used a splintered bit of drawer wood to stabilize the leg, tied it gently, wrapping it snug but not too tight. Every time the girl whimpered, Emily spoke. "You're doing great. You're so brave, you know that? Braver than me." A crash outside the room startled them both. Emily froze. The floor shuddered beneath them. She could hear yelling in the distance, someone shouting orders, but the words were muffled, swallowed by fire. She had to get them out, now. "All right, I'm gonna lift you," she said, slipping her arms under the girl's shoulders and knees. "We're going slow, okay? Like we're dancing. Ever dance with your mama?" The girl didn't answer. She bit her lip, her face scrunched in pain. Emily lifted her, careful to keep the leg supported. The girl cried out, the sound piercing and raw. Emily held her tighter. I got you. It's okay now." They turned toward the hallway. Her plan was simple. Same way in, same way out. But the hallway was gone. Or maybe not gone. Just buried under flame and falling pieces of ceiling. The air had changed again. It was louder now, more alive. The fire seemed to move faster, breathing harder. She backtracked toward what looked like another exit. A side door, maybe, past the old kitchen. The girl's weight wasn't heavy, but her muscles ached with effort. Her mouth was dry, lips cracked. Her eyes stung. Almost there, almost. Then a crack like a gunshot. A sound deep and terrible. The ceiling above them moaned, then shifted. Emily turned. A section of beam, thick, jagged, was falling toward them. She didn't think. There wasn't time. She dropped to the ground and rolled, curling herself around the child's body, shielding her with everything she had. The world above them exploded. Pain roared through her shoulder. The heat blistered her left arm instantly. She couldn't move, but she kept her arms tight, her breath shallow, her body locked in place. The girl beneath her trembled, but she was still breathing. Emily closed her eyes. "You're gonna be okay," she murmured, not knowing if the girl could hear her. "Even if I'm not. You are." She held on as everything around them fell into fire. Outside, people were counting the number of houses that had collapsed. Inside, someone else was counting breaths. Slow, painful, one at a time. Emily didn't know how long they'd been under. Could have been 10 minutes. Could have been an hour. Time was strange when everything around you had stopped being solid. The beam had caught her across the shoulder and part of her back, trapping her on her side. One arm was pinned, the other curled around the girl like a promise she hadn't yet broken. Her left cheek pressed into a floor that no longer felt like wood, just heat and ash and splinters. The air was thick with dust and smoke. Breathing hurt. Not in the way a sore throat hurts, but deeper, like the inside of her lungs had been scratched by fire. Her skin stung, especially her arm. She could feel the way the fabric of her shirt had melted to it. Her hand was already going numb. But worse than the pain, worse than the weight pressing down on her ribs, was the silence. The little girl wasn't crying anymore. "Hey," Emily whispered, her lips dry, voice hoarse. "You with me?" No answer. "Come on, sweetheart. I need to know you're still here." She turned her head, just slightly, until she could see the child's face. Her eyes were shut. Lips parted, shallow breath. Still breathing, but slower now. Emily's own panic surged. She couldn't let her sleep, couldn't let her drift. "You ever been to the beach?" she asked, not sure if she was talking to the girl or herself. "There's a place back home, just a little spot, tucked behind a row of crooked houses. Nobody really goes there anymore." She paused to catch her breath, coughing once, swallowing the sting. You walk down this path, all overgrown, with these big flat rocks. And then you see it. The water. Gentle. Not wild like you see in movies. Just soft. Lapping up against the sand like it's trying not to wake it. Her voice cracked. She tried to adjust, but the beam held her fast. Every inch of movement scraped something inside her. My dad used to take me there after he got off his shift. He worked nights, security, never had much time. But that beach? That was ours. The girl stirred, barely. Her fingers twitched in Emily's hand. There you are, Emily whispered. You're a fighter, I can tell. You've got that kind of fire in you, not the kind that burns buildings, the kind that keeps people alive. The walls groaned around them, dust sifting down in little streams. Something outside had shifted. Distant voices, maybe, but muffled, like they were buried in cotton. I need you to hold on, okay? She said, squeezing the girl's hand. We're not done yet. You and me, we've still got waves to chase. She rested her cheek against the girl's temple. The world narrowed. Her pain became a rhythm, syncing with the child's breathing. Inhale, exhale, count. Somewhere beyond the rubble, she heard shouts. Over here! Possible survivors! She didn't have the strength to respond, but she knew someone was coming. The girl whimpered softly, shifting against her chest. Emily pressed her lips to the girl's forehead, feeling the soot and salt and warmth of a child still alive. A metallic clang rang out, a tool hitting concrete. Then light, just a sliver at first. Then more. The dust danced in the beam of a flashlight cutting through the cracks. Voices, male, urgent. There's someone! 2, no, 3, no, wait, 2. Boots thudded against wood. Hands pulled debris back in frantic rhythm. Emily's body screamed with each vibration. She tried to speak, but only a croak came out. Then, cool air, real air, a breath that didn't burn. Strong hands lifted the beam off her back. Another pair reached in and cradled the child, gently, so gently. She heard someone call out, "She's breathing!" A moment later, another voice. We've got a second one, female, unconscious, burned, but alive. Emily wanted to laugh, to cry. She wanted to thank the sky itself, but all she managed was a whisper, barely formed. She's okay, right? The firefighter leaned in, nodding. She's okay. You saved her. Then the world tipped sideways. The light faded, and for a while Emily let herself stop counting. No one noticed the pair of burnt hands resting quietly beneath the thin hospital blanket. The cameras were pointed elsewhere, toward the men in soot-streaked uniforms and reflective jackets, smiling tight for the press, with exhaustion in their eyes and microphones in their faces. Emily opened her eyes to the smell of antiseptic and smoke. The light above her buzzed faintly, flickering like it couldn't make up its mind. A plastic curtain rustled beside her bed, pulled halfway across the makeshift ward inside what had once been a school gymnasium. Now it was a temporary shelter with IV poles in every corner and cots pressed shoulder to shoulder. Her arm felt heavy, wrong. She tried to sit up, gasped. Her left hand, the one that had shielded the girl, was wrapped thick in gauze. It throbbed beneath the dressing, a heartbeat of pain that didn't stop, didn't even fade. A nurse noticed her stirring and came over. Burmese, maybe 20. Kind eyes. You're awake, he said gently. Emily coughed. Her voice cracked. The little girl, did she? The nurse nodded. She's alive. She's stable. She's in the other wing with pediatrics. She asks for you. Emily let out a shaky breath. She didn't realize how much she'd been holding inside. Can I see her? She asked. Not yet, he said, voice soft. You need to rest. Your arm, 2nd-degree burns. Could have been worse. Could have been dead, she murmured, more to herself. Both of you could have. He adjusted her IV and gave her a small smile before stepping back. She lay there a while longer, watching the ceiling fans spin, listening to the noise of too many people packed into one place. Moans, distant coughing, shoes squeaking on concrete. It all felt far away. Eventually, someone pulled back the curtain. A man stepped in. White shirt, clipboard, no name tag. "I'm Thomas Cray," he said. "Logistics coordinator, International Med Response." Emily blinked, waited. "You're the volunteer who went into the fire?" She nodded slowly. He pulled a chair closer, but didn't sit. "Look, the team's grateful. Truly. What you did was brave, reckless, but brave. That said, we're in a difficult spot here." She looked at him, unsure what he meant. "You went in without clearance. No protective gear, no command approval." "I didn't have time," she said quietly. "The girl was screaming. I understand. And again, we're grateful. But there are protocols for a reason. The Burmese government is watching us closely. We're here on borrowed goodwill. If it gets out that a foreign volunteer broke chain of command..." "You want me to lie?" she asked. "No," he said quickly. "Just stay quiet. Let the fire department take credit. They're the local heroes. Keeps the optics clean." Emily stared at him. Her skin itched under the bandages, not from the burn, but from something deeper, something raw. "They didn't pull her out," she said. "I did." "I know that. But no one else needs to." He scribbled something on his clipboard, like it was a decision he'd already made before walking in. "The press is outside. They're already doing interviews. Just let them run their version. It's safer for everyone." Then he turned and left. Emily lay still. She could hear them, through the open windows. Reporters shouting questions, cameras clicking. A cheer as one of the firefighters stepped out and waved. "Can you tell us what happened in the house? How dangerous was it inside? Did you think you might die?" Not a single voice asked about the woman with burned hands in bed 7. Later that evening, a translator came by to collect statements. She skipped Emily. That night, a nurse came to change her bandages. As the wrap peeled away, Emily looked down at the angry, blistered skin on her arm, red and pink and raw. "It'll scar," the nurse said softly. Emily nodded. "That's all right." She looked at her hand, the hand that had held a child's life like it was made of glass. "Nobody saw me," she whispered. The nurse didn't answer, just dipped the gauze in saline and kept working, gentle and slow. But outside, the city buzzed with stories that weren't hers. The press forgot her name. The relief staff stopped mentioning what she'd done. The headlines were already full of heroes, uniformed, male, official. There was no room for an outsider with burnt skin and no credentials. But a mother remembered. It was late morning, maybe 10, when the canvas flap of the recovery tent rustled in a rush of wind, or what she thought was wind. Emily sat propped against a mound of thin pillows, her left arm elevated, wrapped in a fresh set of gauze and bandage tape. Her breakfast sat untouched on the tray. She'd been staring at the bowl of plain rice for almost an hour, her stomach quiet, but her mind loud. She didn't hear the woman come in. She only felt it. A shift in the air, a hush in the tent. Like the world had lowered its voice out of respect. Then a small sound, a sob, a soft, unsteady breath. Emily turned her head and saw her. The mother, the woman from the fire. The one whose voice had cut through the chaos. The one who had pleaded and cried and clawed at the caution tape. She stood now in the middle of the tent, clothes still smudged with soot, hair pulled back with a fraying red band. Her face was blotched with tears, her chest rising fast, like the emotion in her body couldn't wait for language. She moved to Emily's cot, dropped to her knees, and bowed her head, her forehead pressing to Emily's shin, her hands gripping the edge of the sheet like it was sacred. "Thank you," she said, again and again, her accent thick, her voice breaking. "Thank you, white nurse. Thank you. Thank you." Emily's breath caught. The woman's hands were trembling. Her shoulders shook with each syllable. My daughter. She's alive. She's breathing. Because you. Emily's voice came from somewhere deep in her chest. Please, don't kneel, please. She reached out with her unbandaged hand. It hovered in the air for a second, unsure, then landed gently on the woman's back. She's okay? The mother nodded, crying harder. Alive. She say you hold her. In the dark. Emily blinked, tears gathering, hot and stinging. I just did what anyone would do. The woman looked up then, eyes dark and wet. No, nobody go, only you. For a moment, neither spoke. There was just the hum of the generator outside, the soft chatter of nurses moving through the corridor, and the breathing of two women, one injured, one thankful, wrapped in something wordless and enormous. A camera clicked. They both turned. Two men in press vests had slipped in through the tent flap. One already had his camera to his eye. The other was frowning, clipboard in hand. I'm sorry, the one with the clipboard said, stepping forward. We can't have civilians in here. The mother stiffened, unsure. She's not a civilian, Emily said, trying to sit up straighter. It's not about that. It's about optics, he replied, glancing at the photographer. This isn't an ideal moment to capture. It's off-narrative. Emily stared. Off what? We're focusing coverage on the firefighting teams today. Local aid. Clear messaging. If you don't mind. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. The mother stood, wiping her eyes. Her hands still shook, but she nodded respectfully, almost like she was apologizing for something she hadn't done. Before leaving, she turned back to Emily. Her voice was low, quiet as a prayer. She live, I don't forget. Emily couldn't speak. She could only nod, her throat tight with something she couldn't swallow. The camera didn't follow the mother out. The clipboard man gave a polite smile, nodded once, and followed. And just like that, the moment was gone. But Emily kept feeling the pressure of the woman's forehead against her leg. Her words stuck in the softest part of Emily's mind. She live, I don't forget. The world had already moved on. But a mother hadn't. And that, somehow, felt more real than any headline ever could. A scar isn't just what burns leave on skin. Sometimes it's what gets carved beneath it. Quiet, deep, where no bandage can reach. By the third day, the news had spread far beyond the tents and makeshift clinics. There were headlines now, in 3 languages, on cheap flyers plastered to bus stops, on battered radios whispering from street corners, on little black screens glowing in trembling hands. Heroic fire brigade rescues girl from deadly blaze. Emily sat on the edge of her cot, her left arm propped on a pillow, the burn beneath its layers still aching with a dull throb. She could hear the buzz of reporters outside the fence again, could even pick out one voice calling into a mic. Still no word yet on the identity of the child's rescuer, but authorities confirm that brave members of Rangoon Fire Division were first on scene. Her stomach curled, not from the pain, from something else. She reached across with her good hand, picked up the folded newspaper someone had left on a bedside table. The front page showed a photo of a soot-covered firefighter holding the child, wrapped in a blanket, her face turned toward his chest. In the background, smoke still curled from the wreckage. Her name wasn't there. The article went on and on, statements from officials, quotes from commanders, phrases like decisive action and strategic coordination. Not once did it mention a volunteer. Not once did it say the girl had been found alive, before the firefighters even arrived. Emily ran her thumb along the edge of the page. The truth was being erased in real time. Later that morning, while her bandages were being changed, a young nurse named Lynn, quiet, polite, always rushed, chatted idly with another staffer behind the curtain. They didn't think she could hear. "She's the one from the fire, right?" the staffer asked. Lynn answered, not unkindly. "Yeah. Lucky she didn't die. Who knows why she even went in there?" Emily froze. Her breath caught in her throat. The other staffer chuckled. Maybe she wanted her name in the papers. They laughed. Moved on to the next topic. Something about the broken AC unit. A supply delay. But Emily couldn't move, couldn't swallow. The words had landed like stones, soft, but brutal. She didn't want her name in the papers. She didn't even want thanks. She just wanted truth. A sliver of it. Some small corner of the story that still belonged to her. But it was gone. The girl was being credited to someone else. The mother's voice erased from the footage. The badge Emily had thrown in the dirt still lay there, somewhere near that charred lot, buried now in ash and silence. She pressed her fingers into her thighs, hard, trying to keep the tears back. "You okay?" Lynn asked, poking her head around the curtain, her face open, unknowing. Emily looked up, tried to smile. "Yeah, just tired." She didn't say. "Tired of pretending I'm invisible. Tired of watching strangers retell my story like I wasn't there. Tired of being rewritten before I even got to speak." The next time someone brought her tea and toast, she saw a pamphlet folded beneath the tray. Relief Organization branding. It listed the day's press highlights. Page 3, hero profiles. All men. All firemen. Not one line about a nurse. Not even a footnote. She turned her head toward the wall and stared at the seam in the canvas. A breeze pushed through it, gentle and aimless, carrying the faint scent of smoke that still lingered in the air. The same smoke she'd walked into. The same smoke she'd nearly died in. The one place where her actions had been real. Now it was like it never happened. Like she'd dreamed it. Like the girl was someone else's miracle. She lay back, eyes open, arm throbbing beneath the gauze. There's a kind of pain that doesn't bleed. A kind that doesn't blister or scar. It just stays, like a name never spoken. Like a story retold wrong. Like the moment you realize the truth isn't what people remember. It's what they decide to forget. She survived, but it was like she'd never been there at all. Emily filled out the withdrawal form 2 days after the mother's visit. No explanation. Just the line where she signed her name, shaky from pain meds, and the quiet look from the volunteer coordinator who didn't ask why. They let her go without question. They always did when someone burned out. No medals, no handshakes. No one offered her a flight home, but she booked one anyway, through a cracked phone screen in the back of a supply tent. On the morning she left, no one noticed. She didn't expect them to. She sat on the plane, with her left hand tucked inside her jacket sleeve, still wrapped, still useless. The pressure made her shoulders scream, but she kept her face neutral, eyes fixed on the window as Rangoon slipped away below her. Brown rivers, tin roofs, and the shrinking, smudged outline of where it all happened. The place where her name had been swallowed. Back in Lyon, things were quieter than she remembered. The city was clean, cold. The buildings didn't lean like they were about to fall. The air didn't smell of smoke, and nobody knew. Not her neighbor, who still greeted her with a wave from across the stairwell. Not the woman at the bakery, who asked if she'd been on vacation. Not even her own sister, who left a voicemail saying, "Can't wait to hear all about your trip." Emily didn't return the call. She moved back into her tiny apartment, a fourth-floor walk-up where the radiator wheezed at night, and the walls held on to winter like an old secret. The kettle still leaked from the bottom. The mirror above the sink was still cracked at the corner. Her left hand never fully healed. She could close it halfway, but opening it? Not without pain. Some mornings she stared at her fingers, willing them to stretch. They didn't. Physical therapy was slow. The therapist was kind but distant, the way medical professionals sometimes are when they've seen too many injuries and not enough resolution. "You'll regain some mobility," he said, "but not all. You might want to consider adaptive tools, especially if you're going back to the field." She didn't answer. She already knew she wouldn't be going back. The nights were the worst. Sleep came in fragments, stitched together with flashes. smoke, splinters, the sound of a roof beam groaning just before it collapsed. She didn't dream so much as remember, and always at some point she'd hear it, a small voice. "Nurse?" So soft, like it had to cross continents to reach her. "Nurse, are you still here?" She'd sit upright in bed, sweating, her hand curled against her chest, the sound fading before she could answer. She never told anyone. What would she say? That her body had made it home, but something else, something quieter, hadn't. That she walked through days like she was underwater, and no one noticed the air in her lungs didn't feel like enough. She tried writing, a few times. Emails she never sent, letters to herself. One night, she wrote the girl's name on a piece of paper and stared at it until her vision blurred. She'd almost died for that child, and no one knew. No story, no recognition, just a line in a folder somewhere marked closed. One afternoon, months later, she passed a bookstore window. A new title sat on display. Heroes of the Fire, First Responders of Rangoon. The cover showed a firefighter holding a child, the same photo from the paper. Emily stepped inside, leafed through the pages. Her name wasn't in it, not even in the acknowledgments. She stood there for a moment, hand trembling against the spine of the book. Then she set it back on the shelf and walked out. Back home, she boiled water for tea. The old kettle still leaked. She let it. She poured carefully with her right hand, the left resting in her lap, fingers half curled like they were waiting for something to return. The world had moved on, but sometimes, just before the sky darkened, she'd sit at her window, watching the light slide off the rooftops, and whisper into the quiet. I was there. Just that. I was there, even if no one ever said her name. The rains came back, as they always did. But this time, they didn't just soak the soil. They fed something deeper, something rooted not in the ground, but in memory. In Rangoon, the air turned heavy again. The clouds moved low and slow, dark with promise. Thunder rolled far off, like a story being told in another room. The kind of sky that made people pause before stepping outside, unsure if they needed a coat or courage. And near the edge of the hospital grounds, past the burned patch of earth, past the empty lots still waiting for repairs, a new building stood. Small, square, nothing fancy. Tin roof, concrete walls, a wide wooden door painted by hand in soft yellow. It didn't look like much from the outside, but inside you could hear the soft scratch of pencils, the quiet hum of reading voices, the shuffle of feet too small to reach the floor when they sat. A school, the kind that didn't need to make headlines to matter. No reporters came to the opening. No government officials. No ribbon to cut. Just a gathering of neighbors under umbrellas, the wet ground soft beneath their sandals. They brought baskets of rice, bundles of flowers, stories wrapped in quiet pride. The woman who started it all, she stood near the door, rain on her shoulders, hands folded at her chest. The same red scarf around her hair. Her name was Dao Henin. She never called herself a founder. She said it was the children's place, not hers. But everyone knew she had fought for this. Not with fists, with questions, with persistence, with visits to every NGO office that would open the door. With broken English and borrowed maps. She showed them what had been lost, and then told them what could be built in its place. The land had once held the house that burned, the one where her daughter nearly died, the one where a woman with no uniform, no authority, no camera, had stepped into fire for a child who wasn't hers. That woman's name had vanished from the newspapers, but it lived here, painted in careful script above the entrance. Emily Light Home, a place for learning, for laughter, for what comes after fear. Inside, a mural covered the front wall. Children had helped paint it, brushed with small hands, guided by local artists. It showed a woman kneeling, her arms around a little girl, her face soft, her hair pulled back, her bandaged arm cradling the child like a question finally answered. It wasn't perfect. The eyes were too large, the nose a little crooked, but everyone who saw it understood. Some of the older kids called her Teacher Emily, though they'd never met her. Others just pointed and whispered, "She's the one who didn't leave." On the first day of classes, the rain came down in thin gray sheets. Water pooled along the windowsill, but inside the lights stayed on, the voices stayed bright. Dao Henin stood at the back of the room, watching her daughter, now 7, trace letters on a chalkboard with a stick of white that left dust on her fingertips. The girl looked up, saw her mother, smiled. "She's learning," Dao Henin whispered, mostly to herself. "She's not afraid anymore." A volunteer teacher passed by and touched her arm. "The kids love it here. It feels warm, safe." Dao Henin nodded. She didn't say how many nights she had prayed with no words, how long it had taken to stop seeing flames when she closed her eyes. Instead, she looked at the mural again. "She saved my daughter," she said, "and she asked for nothing." The teacher followed her gaze. "Do you think she'll ever come back?" Dao Henin didn't answer right away. She placed her hand over her heart, then shook her head gently. She left something better than a return. Outside, the storm eased into a soft drizzle. Children leaned over their desks, sounding out words. Somewhere, a pencil dropped and rolled, followed by a burst of giggles, and behind them, Emily's painted eyes looked on, not famous, not forgotten, just present, a quiet kind of memory. One that held the rain without drowning. One that stayed, even after everything else had gone. Her name never made it into print. But somehow, in a far corner of Rangoon, children were still saying it aloud, clear as sunlight. "Miss Emily!" It started with a box. A small, beat-up parcel wedged between junk mail and an electricity bill in her Lyon mailbox. No return address. Just her name written in thin, careful script across the top. Inside, wrapped in brown paper and the scent of dust, was a photograph. She didn't remember the picture being taken. But there she was, in the tent, hair damp, eyes tired, hand still in bandages, smiling weakly at a girl with missing teeth and soot on her cheeks. Someone had drawn a heart around the two of them, then written in permanent marker beneath it, "Thank you for saving our children." Emily sat down on this kitchen floor. Right there, still in her coat. The kettle whistled behind her, but she didn't move. Her fingers trembled. That night, she didn't sleep. By morning, her ticket was booked. She didn't tell her sister. Didn't notify the aid agency. She wasn't going as a volunteer. She wasn't going for credit. She just needed to go. It had been a year. When she arrived at the edge of Rangoon again, it was monsoon season. The same heavy skies, the same red dirt thick under her shoes, but the air was different now, softer. The neighborhood had changed. Where rubble once sat in broken piles, now stood narrow homes and small shops painted in colors that dared to be bright. Kids played barefoot, shouting through puddles like they owned the whole world. Emily followed the map folded in her coat pocket, heart pounding harder the closer she got. And then, there it was. Emily Light Home. The name still felt too big for her. She stood across the street, uncertain. Watching children file in through the doorway, balancing books on their heads, laughing in uneven bursts. The building was humble, smaller than she'd imagined. But the mural, God, the mural. It was her, rough, imperfect brushstrokes, a little crooked, but undeniably her. Holding the child, eyes tired, smile faint. She stepped closer. A boy looked up, pointed. His shout echoed like a pebble skipping across water. "It's her!" A dozen heads turned, then 20, and then they ran. She had to brace herself, tiny arms wrapped around her waist, her thighs, one small body clinging to her good arm. One little girl, missing two front teeth, barefoot, reached up and touched her face gently, like checking if it was real. "You're the fire angel, right?" she asked, eyes wide. Emily choked on something too big for words. "I'm not an angel," she whispered, kneeling down. "Just someone who didn't know better." The girl leaned in and wrapped her arms around her neck, and Emily held her. For a long time, she didn't move. More children gathered. One clutched her hand. Another pulled gently at her sleeve. From inside the classroom, someone started clapping. Not loudly, just a slow, rhythmless, awkward kind of applause that only children know how to begin. She looked up and saw her, Dauhnin. Standing at the door, hands over her mouth, tears slipping past her fingers. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Emily smiled, shaky, eyes burning. "I just wanted to see it," she said, voice cracking. "To know it was real." "It's more than real," Dauhnin whispered, walking forward. "It breathes." They stood there, surrounded by children, in the warm drizzle of afternoon rain. Emily looked down. Her left hand still didn't straighten all the way. The burn had faded to something pale and tight, but the girl beside her, alive, laughing, tugging at her scarf, was the only proof she needed. She had come back. Not for headlines, not for justice. For this, for them. Inside the school, a bell rang. Feet scattered. Books were lifted. The day continued. But near the mural, her name remained. Not printed, not archived, spoken. "Miss Emily." That was enough. That was everything. They can forget a woman. They can cut her name from the headlines, bury it beneath newer tragedies and shinier heroics. They can erase her from reports, from interviews, from glossy fundraising brochures printed half a world away. But what she leaves behind, if it's real enough, true enough, won't go quietly. In a dusty corner of Rangoon, where the earth still remembers fire, children sit cross-legged on worn mats, tracing letters with stubby fingers. Their pencils are short. Their voices stumble through syllables. But they are learning. They are not afraid. And over them, above their heads, sunlight slips through a cracked window and lands on a mural. A simple painting of a woman holding a child. She's not smiling broadly. Her face is tired, eyes soft. One arm is wrapped in a bandage. To the world, she was nobody. A footnote, if that. A mistake, even. But to these children, she is a beginning. Outside the school, a boy walks past, carrying a stack of books tied with a rubber band. He pauses, looks at the name painted above the door. He doesn't know the full story. Not the fire. Not the silence that followed. Not the woman who returned without asking for anything. But he knows enough. "That's her name," he says to his younger sister, Emily. She nods solemnly, as if it's something sacred. And that's what remains. Not the headlines, not the forgotten ceremony, but the whispered truth passed from child to child, mother to mother, in a place where names matter less than what they mean. Emily never came back for recognition. She came because something unfinished had been waiting for her. Because silence, when carried long enough, begins to hum. And because sometimes the most ordinary people step into fire not to be remembered, but simply because someone needed saving. And maybe that's the truest kind of legacy. Not a statue, not a headline, but a child safe, a school open, a name spoken softly but often. In this world, people will always forget. Stories fade. Accolades go to the loudest voices, the most polished uniforms. But in Rangoon, under a tin roof that rattles when it rains, in a classroom with mismatched chairs and uneven floors, something else endures. Hope, lit quietly by the memory of a woman who never asked to be known, and yet became unforgettable. So no, you can't erase her. You can't silence what she lit, somewhere in Burma. In the laughter of a girl who once feared fire. In the calm of a teacher's voice guiding a child through a new word. In the paintbrush of a boy outlining her face again on the wall. She stays. Emily, not a hero in the eyes of the world. But here, She's everything. If this story moved you, if you believe that quiet acts of courage should be remembered just as loudly as the loud ones, pass it on, say her name, share her light, because even when the world forgets a woman, what she left behind doesn't. We'll see you again in our next story, where another quiet moment might hold a powerful lesson. If this one moved you, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next truth waiting to be told.